Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar brought to you by ADP and Workplace Wizards, titled How to Build a Culture of Compliance in HR. My name's Jack. I'm the APAC editor at HRD, and I'll be moderating this session alongside our panelists. I'll introduce them shortly, but just before we kick off today, I wanted to take you through the options to customize your view on Zoom for your preferred viewing. If you'd like to look closer at the slides or speaker, you can resize or move the shared screen and speaker video windows by dragging the separator between them. If you have a question for the presenters, please use the Q&A panel in the Zoom toolbar. You can find this at the bottom of your screen. Just click Q&A and type in your question when you want to ask it. If you need captions, look for the Show Captions button at the top to enable or adjust closed captions. You can also adjust your audio settings by clicking the arrow next to the microphone icon in the bottom left. If you have any technical issues, please send a message in the chat and our team will assist you with that. So on to the speakers. We have first up, Emmy Andriotis, who is the HR Director at ADP Australia and New Zealand. She's a highly experienced senior HR executive and she has extensive experience with Australian and multinational organisations. So she's, worked with various industries implementing strategic HCM initiatives that improve employee engagement, succession, culture, talent, and leadership capability. Emmy, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, all.
And next up, we have Mark, who is sitting next to her. He's the Managing Director at Workplace Wizards. Mark founded Workplace Wizards to pursue a passion of partnering with Australian businesses, and he specialises in things like people and culture consulting, industrial relations, and legal compliance. Mark, you too, welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me.
So running over the agenda today, first up will be the right to disconnect, flex requests, and working from anywhere. Alongside all these, we'll have some polls where you guys can share your thoughts and experiences. Up next, we have impact of the Coles and Woolies case. That's obviously a big one that's going on at the moment. If you read HRD, you would have seen it all throughout the newsletter. Third, we have building a compliance culture for employee engagement, very important. And what's on the horizon, a bit of forecasting for what we can expect in the future will be last up. So if we turn the slide over again, we'll start with a poll. So quick poll if you guys want to answer what you have done to implement the right to disconnect in your workplace. I'm sure it's varied across different industries and different professions. You probably would have seen the poll pop up here. So chuck your answer in. It's multiple choice. And we'll run through what you guys are seeing. So whether you developed a policy, leader training, employee/employer consultations, organizational wide change to start and finish times, technical email and chat start and finish times, changes to employment contract clauses, or still working through it. Would love to hear your answers.
Jack, I think you can choose more than one. Is that right?
Give it a go. I'm not entirely sure.
I've done a few things, folks.
But if you have a go.
I'll put you on the spot there, Jack. Come on.
Yes, you can. Rebecca, there we go. She's all over the chat. Thank you, Dorothy. Okay, so the results are in. It looks like still working through it is the major one, but closely followed by developed a policy, 36%, leader training, 35%. So Emmy and Mark, I'll start with you, Emmy. Are you surprised by the results that have come through in this poll?
Look, no. I think, when the legislation came out last year, there was a lot of confusion, and I think a lot of organisations were looking left and right to see what everyone else was doing. So, and I think organisations have needed to take the time to work through their industry, what's important to them, what's going to work for them as a business, and balancing that with employer associate needs. So I think at the end of the day, even before the right to disconnect legislation came out, we know that a lot of organisations, genuine effort, trying to always do the right thing, allowing their people to work flexibly, always empowering them to, work and do their own hours. So I think that for most part, there's been a good balance with most organisations. So it's really trying to find that balance. But again, it's not an easy topic. It's a hard one to broach, and it's one that needs a whole of business effort and commitment to work through. So well done to those who have kicked off and started the policy and the training. It's a start of a conversation. there's still opportunity to do more and reach out to your peers. We're going to hear a little bit today from Mark and myself on some of the actions that I took, and Mark will take you through as well. So hopefully that'll give you some tips to take away.
Yeah, definitely. Very excited to hear what you guys have to say on it, because obviously it's a very important topic, but something that is largely unknown, stepping into the unknown, which can be daunting. Mark, would you agree with what Emmy said there, or do you have any thoughts on the results of this poll?
No, I predicted that the still working through it would be the highest cohort, given how new it is, as Emmy said. So, and I think too, until we get some guidance, and I'll talk on that a little bit more, until we get some guidance on exactly what I have to do, what the cases say is the watermark, then in my experience, organisations often set their bearings in response to that. So until you get the case, you don't really know exactly what you have to do. So.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. Well, we've got one more poll for you guys. So second one before Mark jumps into a bit of content. So if you see up on your screen now, how comfortable you are with what you have done is compliant and effective. So this is a bit of a personal one with your own confidence. So if you see the poll again up on screen, you've got 5 choices there: extremely comfortable, very comfortable, moderately comfortable, slightly comfortable, or not at all comfortable. Yeah, be honest. Tell us your thoughts. Obviously, we hope at the end of this session that if you're not that comfortable, you'll be a little bit more comfortable. So we'll wait for those to come in and then we'll run through them.
Are you confidently working through it or nervously working through it is what we'll find out here.
And there we go. Perhaps surprisingly, just 5% extremely comfortable. And obviously, the most popular choice was moderately comfortable. Mark, any thoughts on this? Are you surprised by this outcome here?
No, I'm sensing just that uncertainty at the moment. People are unsure. We're not sure if we're doing enough. We're not confident that we're doing enough. We might do more. And so I think there is certainly this poll. The 2 polls seem to suggest that there's a real wait and see approach.
And is this what you're seeing with your clients at the moment? Does it reflect what you're seeing in this poll?
Yeah, well, as Emmy mentioned, it is very new, these right to disconnect laws. So they came in August, I think it was last year, where it was enshrined in the Fair Work Act that you have a right to disconnect. You do not have to answer the boss's calls unless it is unreasonable. And that word that us lawyers love so much, reasonableness. And, it's infused through the Fair Work Act in so many places. So then, of course, it has some factors about what might be considered to be reasonable or unreasonable. Factors including, all right, when's the contact being made? How disruptive is it? How often? And so you've got employees with a right to not do their work, outside of work hours. And this brushes up against those employment contract clauses, which say things like you are expected to do, nominally you have 38 hours a week, but you're expected to do anything and everything to complete your role, especially being more senior and more well remunerated. So we have this tension. All right, when can I pull the plug on the boss? When can I ignore that pinging notification and that extra call, particularly when we tie that to working from home without that visibility of whether an employee is doing what they should be doing. And so because it's so new, we don't have any publicly available cases to get that guidance from. The process which has been laid out by where you can challenge whether it's legitimate for you to disconnect, whether it's unreasonable contact from the bosses, is a dispute mechanism through the Fair Work Commission. You lodge a form saying this is our issue. You go through that process. In my experience, they're mostly confidential. They're mostly roundtable discussions, and an arrangement is facilitated by the Commission between the employer and the employee. And very rarely do they then publish those on the website for the Emmys and the Marks of the world to pour over on a Friday night over a glass of wine. So we're not really, I think, going to see much guidance from the Commission in terms of cases. We're going to get a lot of deals done, a lot of outcomes that are largely confidential to the parties. So how you set your sails for those 44% who are still working through it. I was moderately comfortable. I'm not sure what I should be doing. I think if you're taking the approach that we don't take the mickey, is a good, that's the legal Latin term there. We don't take the mickey. We're making sure that our managers are being reasonable, that they're not contacting our employees all day and night. If the managers aren't getting to their work and then contacting people late because they've only just got through their own stuff, is a recipe for disaster for those weekend and those evening calls. So I think it's just through some good organisational policies is what my clients are doing, what we're helping them with. Right, let's have our leaders leading. Let's make sure we're getting our calls in and getting those check-ins to employees during business hours. If there is a big project or is a big work bottleneck and X just needs to get done, end of quarter, end of year, that sort of thing, then soften the ground there and say to the employees, hey, this is going to be a really dense fortnight. I'm going to need you on. This is going to be a heavy set for all of us. And in my experience, most employees are like, yep, I want to get that project done. If that is a common theme and you're getting disorganised managers doing that every week of the year and ruining the weekends of the employees with inane work requests, then, quite rightly, you're going to see more employees pushing back on that. You're going to see a very employee-friendly tribunal at the moment taking their side, I would say.
Very true.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, as you said, it's the new frontier. There's not a lot of precedent to fall back on. So it's understandable that people would be a bit daunted by it. So I suppose the legal standpoint is a very important discussion to have. But for you, Emmy, on the employer side of things, what have you done to implement the right to disconnect in your workplace at ADP and some of the things that you've learned in doing so?
Yeah, so I think about the journey where we started. So we have 55,000 employees globally, and we have clients across 143 countries. That in itself is complex. But then we funnel it all the way down to Australia and what that means for us. We worked with, a team in France who had the right to disconnect laws back in 2017. So that they've got a bit of experience, a little bit different to what we're seeing here in Australia. But still, nonetheless, wanted to see what actions did they put in place. If I think about our journey, there's a couple of things we did. And I was going to talk about it on a slide, but let's just get into it now. So we spoke about what could we do on the technology side. So this was different tips that we put out to our business. So things like how to use Outlook. You can set your hours of work depending on your country. You can save emails and put them and set them to send them the next day. We did things like pop-ups on screens where it said, you have the right to disconnect. It's time to go off and have a bit of a rest. So that comes up in the evening. Our WebEx chat function. So we go on quiet time, and this starts from the top down. So our head of country, our senior leaders, and everyone in the organisation has got quiet hours on their WebEx chat function. So that's 1 hour either side of core business hours, if you will, right? So whilst people may have different working hours depending on the type of role they occupy, so they may support the Asia Pacific region or they may support the Australian region, either or, we put a blanket rule on and everyone has that in their WebEx chat. So there was a few other things we did in the space of technology, but then moving on to policies, and Mark spoke a little bit about support he's giving to his clients with policy. So one of the decisions we made, and speaking with, there's a lot of collaboration on how and what actions we were going to take. But one of the deciding factors on what policy we put out was there's three things that are really important to our people. One is that request for a flexible working arrangement. That's definitely a hot topic. The second one is hybrid working. So we offer that as a benefit to our people. So they have 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. And the third one is right to disconnect. So we combine the policy and we called it ways of working, because prior to right to disconnect, that was our philosophy. It's how do we work, ways of working. So we brought that to life with the policy. So we introduced that late last year, so soon after the right to disconnect laws were introduced. And in there talks about some of the, the key fundamentals that Mark mentions about, being respectful of people's time, after hours. Do you really need to contact that person? Really think about their personal circumstances, family responsibilities, and so on and so on. And then, we've got, some wording in there that talks about really sitting down and having that genuine conversation with your leader about, what is important to you. So we've opened it up for a dialogue. So we have a policy on that. And then communication, we're very transparent. So very transparent with the right to disconnect. So all the communication, the technology chips I talk about, they went out on Flash, WebEx. Chat tips will just pop up on your screen. Emails went out. There were sessions done with the leadership group offshore. We have about 18% of our people in Australia who have cross-border leaders. So they report to somebody overseas, and in that creates complexity as well with time zones and all the rest. So they will all communicated to as well. So we did a big campaign. The only thing I would close with before we move to the next section is keeping it alive. So we're in the process right now of making sure we do this on an annual basis, right? We do not want our people to think this was a tick box. This is important to us these laws were implemented, and it's important to us now. We value our people, we value their personal time, and given we are global, it's making sure that we relaunch the things that we did a year ago and keep it fresh and alive. So people have responded well to that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I saw Kerry here had a question for you, but it looks like it's been answered in your part, so that's great to hear. But another one here from Hope White that might be good for you, Mark. They're keen to learn about the right to disconnect in different industries that aren't really conducive to normal work hours. So they mentioned agriculture here. How do you go about clients that are in those less traditional types of industries and working with right to disconnect?
As a farm boy myself from Tooleybuck, you can look that up on Google Maps, folks. Very keen to support agriculture there. Well, that's right. And there is, we see, I think, that dovetailing of right to disconnect and flex requests. It's catered around knowledge workers. It's catered around those who can perform their job away from the workplace. And for a great majority of staff, from service station attendants to warehouse pickers and packers, it's just not possible. So the ability to say, I've done my bit, I'm switching off now, is impossible during a warehouse pre-Christmas and an agricultural industry during harvest. So that is part of those factors in the legislation, that if you're super well remunerated and you're on a massively good wicket, your rights to disconnect and say, I'm done for the week, is severely curtailed, because you're getting paid all this money and you head of surgery at the Alfred Hospital. You ain't switching off. And those factors will weigh into each specific industry as well. So for agricultural, if it's harvest or it's vintage, absolutely, it's all hands to the pump. You have no right to disconnect. But and this was never me, but generally with agricultural workers, if you find you're doing those 50, 60, 70-hour weeks outside of that, then that is when the employer will say, well, hang on, I've got a fatigue risk here. I've got to drive home. I've had enough. I'm done for the day. I've done more than my contractual hours. So that's what will be weighed up there, that the frequency of those extra requests of the employer.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And as with a lot of things in HR, it's never a one-size-fits-all approach. So implement what works best for your business. But Emmy, something interesting that I'd like to discuss with you over at ADP is the working from anywhere model. As I know it, you guys had some thoughts on that. What's your experience with the work from anywhere work model?
Yeah. Look, I think I always take it back to be really practical with decisions that an organisation makes. So look at the industry. Are your clients in Australia? Are they global? Hours of work? There's so many factors that need to be considered. So, and if I think about our experience, we did have a number of requests that come through on our associates wanting to work in different locations, whether it's in Australia but working somewhere remote or in another state, that they were coming through. And then we're even getting requests to work literally anywhere, so overseas. So what we decided to do, again, we think about ways of working and offering our associates flexibility. We try and find the happy medium and try and offer them some benefits that work well, hence the hybrid working. But in this particular case, when it comes to working anywhere, what we've offered is a really great benefit, I think, and we've offered this globally, is 4 weeks in a year to work from wherever they like. So whether it's in Australia. So I might decide to take a break over Christmas, 1 or 2 weeks with my family, and I decide I want to exercise 2 of those weeks to continue to work from Queensland. I'm working during the day, but I'm with my family in the evenings. So that was put out. And then before you knew it, we got a request to work from overseas. So we have lots of people who they've got their families from overseas, whether it's in Europe or India, and there's many other countries. So what we say is we are always open to these requests, but obviously there's a compliance side to things, right? So we need to consider and factor things like, legally speaking, can they be working overseas for 4 weeks? Is there any tax concerns for them working overseas? And then the last one for us is safety. So where is it that they want to go and work overseas? So we are fortunate enough to have a global mobility area that we partner with, and they look at all things of tax and safety and all the rest. There's a couple of countries, unfortunately, we've had to knock some associates back, and that's for safety reasons. We're not going to send anyone off to a war zone, but ultimately we will, where we can, we'll honour all those requests. They can go back and they spend a couple of weeks being with their family in the evenings and working from home in a time zone that works for us. And that's worked really well. That has been very well received.
And Jack,
yeah, well, that's a really innovative approach.
Sorry, mate, I was just going to say, it might be timely if I just jump in here too with I guess the underpinnings of why employers are creating policies like this, and just for our attendees. So hopefully it doesn't surprise anyone that there are abilities for certain classes of employees to request, demand the flexibility to work from home and work from anywhere. And so, very quick spin around the legislative underpinnings, Julie, but we have the right inserted in the Fair Work Act that certain groups, and only certain groups, are able to request flexible work arrangements. And it's those who are caring for an elderly parent who are 55 or older, mature workers, if we could call them that, who are pregnant, who have disability. But far and away the most common is those who are looking after a child of school age or younger. And so employers have said, right, we have certain obligations under the Fair Work Act to recognise these requests, respond to these requests, do so in a timely manner, and we're only able to reject them if we have reasonable business grounds. Again, that reasonable word we love. And so that has launched 1,000 ships of cases before the Commission around employees post-COVID getting comfortable working from home, saying, right, I want to lock this in for as long as I can, brushing up against those return to work mandates from their employers. So, great employers like ADP are developing these whole range of ways to be able to accommodate that, extend that to all employees, which is wonderful, and offer different benefits. But what we're seeing at the pointy end is these employees saying, right, I want to go to the Commission and try and get an order to lock in my flexible work arrangements and keep them going for as long as possible. And Jack, what the cases there are showing us is, firstly, number of employees are getting knocked back because they don't meet those requirements. They're not a parent of school-age children. They just like working from home 100%. And so there's been a lot of cases of employers going, well, I just really like it and I want you to kind of insist on it for me. And those cases naturally fail on jurisdictional grounds because they're not eligible. But we then see, and particularly the last couple of years, post 2024, and this Westpac decision that we've got on that third dot point there, we're seeing the pendulum swing very much towards employees. So initially, provided the employer said, well, we really want them to come into office summertime. We really want them to interact with their colleagues occasionally. It's just better. And that was essentially all the evidence that they brought on. And the Commission went, yeah, we agree with that. We see that as being a legitimate business need. And so we had a number of decisions through 2023 and 2024 that supported that. And then we see, and this is that probing, insightful question there, Jack, of is the dam wall breaking? We see this Chandler and Westpac decision. And that was, Ms. Chandler had been working in an admin role, 100% from home, quite a number of years post-COVID, and these return to work mandates had increasing, and she said, right, I put in my flex request. I've got young children. I live, I think it was about 100 kilometres south of Sydney. I can't come into your inner Sydney branch occasionally and do what you want to. I can't comply with this return to work mandate. I want my flexibility request supported. And Westpac put on the evidence that employers had put on the last couple of years of saying, well, it's really great to interact with colleagues. And Ms. Chandler was like, well, I do an admin role. I'm in front of a screen. I don't really have a lot of collaboration with others. Well, we think it would be better for your team. I work largely solely. Well, your productivity will suffer, says the bank. And she says, well, here's my performance reviews, and they've been outstanding for a number of years, which clearly demonstrates I can do the job from home. I've been doing it well at home. Let's not upset the apple cart. And so the Commission, in my view, quite rightly, has said, unless you can provide something pretty tangible and specific, bank, we're going to say that this employee's request should be supported. You haven't given us anything tangible on reasonable business grounds that shows us why her need should trump your sort of vague, loose, one-size-fits-all return-to-work mandate. And so this is the first decision, really, where an employee's request to work 100% from home to make it easier for parental and caring responsibilities for a school-aged child has been supported by the Commission. And so I will talk a little bit later about lessons for employers if you get these sort of requests. But if you have any employees, for those attending, if you have any employees who have been at home 100% for the last few years and they don't have a collaborative or a team-based role, you might be seeing similar requests, and they're likely going to get up on the Westpac precedent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you said earlier around the right to disconnect, that it's not ever a one-size-fits-all approach, but it's good to see companies like ADP getting creative with it and doing some innovative policy to kind of meet employees halfway with these requests. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll have another poll for you guys. What action have you taken to ensure annualised salaries and compliance? So we have some more options here. Chuck in which one that you guys relate to the most, and we can chat through it after.
Choose a couple here too, folks, I think. If you're doing
salary is always a divisive topic, the thing that people will be complaining about first and the most. So I'm sure everyone has experience.
All right, let's see if still working through it. Come on, choose people.
You had Peter in the chat, Mark, who said he has family from Tullibuk.
Oh, there you go. Well, you're a lucky man, Peter. You're a lucky man. So do I.
All right, results are in. Looks like the most popular one was individual salary agreement, and then closely followed by time and attendance system, manual Excel tracker to calculate annualized salary payments. The least popular was outsourced to a third party, so all being done in-house. If we chat about these ones, what are the thoughts on this, guys? Does that surprise you at all, the results from this poll?
We'll talk a little bit record keeping later on, whether the manual Excel tracker might get the job done, but time and attendance is higher than I thought, Emmy. The back to timesheets.
Yeah, we're at 38% for that. So I'm really pleased to see that's happening, because I think that
employees love that so much.
That's always the easiest way. One of the easiest ways to manage. So if you've got a time and attendance system, that's great. I always say, if you don't really think about it, it's much easier than an Excel tracker. And I see the individual salary agreements as well. And I think that was quite strong, I think, when this was introduced. That was one of the things that we put in place too quite quickly at ADP. So that's at 39%. And we can see 32% still working through it.
Yeah, interesting to see the results and a big split with them. So people doing all different ways to go about salary compliance. If we move on to the next one, if you guys have been keeping up with the news, you'll see the big case going on now is the Coles and Woolies case, the two big grocery giants. Throw to you, Mark. I'm sure there's a lot more to come, and it's a very complex case. But what are your thoughts on this case, and how can it help the audience here today?
Yes, I get the enviable job of trying to explain this whopper and a shocker of a judgment in 7 minutes to everyone. Where to start? Okay, so we have a prosecution by the Fair Work Ombudsman against Coles and Woolies, supported by a third-party litigant law firm on behalf of the people who were said to be underpaid. And they said the annualised salary arrangements that you've put in place here, and arguing, well, you've set them up and we think you've largely set and forget on those, don't sufficiently compensate for the extra work that the employees have been doing over and above of their set hours. So things like toil or overtime. And the supermarkets are saying, well, you're on an annualised salary. Some months you're ahead. We pay you a little bit more of a margin and you just work your base hours. And some months you're behind. You do a few extra hours. You don't get any additional penalty rates for those. And it smooths out over the year. You just get paid your one standard salary each month. Great for employees because you get predictable, regular income. You can plan your budgets around it. And, we have a contract with you. It has a set-off clause in there, which ordinarily say things like, we're going to pay you a mozza of money, and that is set off by or compensates any miscellaneous award entitlements you might get. And the Fair Work Ombudsman then raised the argument saying, well, no, if you really look into the Fair Work Act, it has set requirements around each distinct pay period. And then there's also some onerous requirements around record-keeping obligations and the specific records you have to keep as an employer in order to comply with the Fair Work regulations. And consistent with that, it's saying you can't average things over a year. You can't have swings and roundabouts and try and somehow magically catch that up over a yearly period. Each pay period stands alone. So if you have award-derived entitlements in that pay period, I can sense the excitement over here already and at home. If you have award-derived pay periods within that period, i.e. I worked 4 hours of overtime, I should have got 4 hours of overtime penalty, then the Act and the award requires that to be discharged, that obligation, within that pay period. To which immediately I went, well, that can't get up. That's going to kill set-off clauses. That's going to render them toothless and useless. But Justice Perham had some support for that argument and didn't like at all this argument around that a she'll be right, an annualised salary arrangement by the supermarkets meant that the employees were ahead over the course of the year. There was no underpayments. Yes, there might have been in that pay period because we didn't pay penalty rates, but over the course of the year, look, they're thousands of dollars better off. And Justice Perham said, well, if you choose to pay more in other pay periods, that's great, but that doesn't absolve you of your responsibility to meet the award, to meet the Act in full for that discrete pay period. Therefore, we think you've underpaid. You've got to work out however many separate pay periods of underpayment you might have, times by the thousands of workers involved. And you better have the records to demonstrate that, because you've also got this other requirement over here that you must keep precise record-keeping requirements. And on my take, the supermarkets have then gone, but hang on, we've got an annualised salary for these guys. We don't need to keep the minutiae of the records because it's all just rolled up, it's all averaged, it's all annualised. We don't need to drill into each specific entitlement within each specific pay period. To which the Ombudsman, and supported by the Federal Court, said, of course you do. That doesn't, because you've done this annualised salary arrangement and you've forgotten about it, doesn't absolve your responsibilities there. So lots to work out for the supermarkets to try and reconcile the extent of the underpayments which has now been found to exist. Lots of back payments, no doubt lots of penalties and interests, costs themselves as well as likely to the Ombudsman.
Yeah, definitely something for people who are working in the space to keep an eye on. And yeah, we'll cover it as it's an ongoing story with any updates that happen in that space. If we go to the next slide, we have Emmy that's going to chat through a bit of a culture of compliance and how it relates to employee engagement.
Thanks, Jack. So listening to Mark and we've spoken a little bit so far about, right to disconnect, flexible working, working anywhere, annualized salaries. It's a lot. And that's just scratching the surface of, if I think about what HR and legal teams and organizations have to think about. And when you think about compliance in an organization, I would say it does not sit with just HR. The foundation starts with whole of organisation needs to take accountability and responsible for this because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. There needs to be great partnerships within an organisation, a lot of education on these topics. So it doesn't matter how many webinars you dial into and how many conversations you have with your lawyers, you feel like you're still only scratching the surface. You want to know more and more and more because you want to do the right thing. So that to create that culture, there's some things that we do at ADP, and I really recommend this. So we have a senior leadership monthly compliance meeting, and it's not just on everything HR or everything that we've spoken about today. It's compliance all round. It's important that you keep this on your agenda as an organisation and you keep it top of mind. So, and it does really help HR teams to bring this to life, and it creates a culture all round. And it's not just something that the HR teams are bringing to the table every time there's a change. The investment into whether you need support with going external investment, you might be thinking about annualized salaries and you think I need investment into some legal advice or a time and attendance tool. Put your business cases together and put them forward because it will eliminate a world of pain. I mean, we've just spoken about a couple of cases and, there's a number of steps and protocols you can put in place. The investment of time for you as HR professionals to take the time to review and collaborate and work through all these changes and what it means for your organisation. Now, how that relates to employee engagement, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here. We've had, we always say compliance is a dry topic, but I'm going to throw something in. I always say to create a culture of compliance, you should have a very strong people and culture strategy. So one of the strategic pillars we have is around culture of connectedness. Now, let me tell you why this is so important. So when people feel connected to their organisation, it helps for better conversations. It helps for them to come forward. They are empowered and they feel connected, right? There's more trust in their organisation and there's a sense of belonging. So there's 3 pillars we implemented as one of the strategic items. One is physical proximity. So this is I am seen. This is them physically coming into the office, right? So it talks to the importance and value of somebody coming in, the importance of coming in, spending time together and getting to know each other, collaborating in person. The second one is emotional proximity. Emotional proximity. So that is I feel seen, I feel valued. So when I walk away from the office every day and I go home, or whether I'm working from home and I log off, I feel seen. I am connected to the business, its values. I feel a sense of belonging. I am recognised for the work that I do. I feel that my organisation is compliant with the legislation. I feel confident that my organisation is making a difference when it comes to every time there's one of these law changes. So it could be the topic of annualised salaries. I feel comfortable to come forward to have a conversation of right to disconnect, or more importantly, I think the hot topic is still, can I work from anywhere, right? Or can I make a flexible work request? So when someone feels valued and when someone feels connected, it does make for an easier conversation. And the last one is know me. So we're partnered really, I'll give a small plug to Gartner out there, but they've got some amazing research. And I will tell you, the data tells us that 82% of people say that they want their employer to know them as a person, not just an employee, know them as my name's Emmy, I have a family, this is a bit about my family, this is what's important to me in the community, these are some of my interests. And again, that culture of connectedness goes a long way when you're integrating a culture of compliance. It makes for a much easier conversation. People feel a sense of belonging. They feel that their organisation cares. So again, this is just another way you can bring people together to have an easier conversation, and hopefully, you're resolving things and you're working through things in-house to avoid Fair Work and so on and so on. So hopefully that gives some context around the culture of compliance in a workplace and how that sort of links into employee engagement.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Emmy. Some great insights there. And I encourage anyone that's listening, if you have any questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat. We have another one here from Peter for you, Emmy. Does the ADP monthly compliance meeting cover aspects of HSE and finance as well as HR?
Covers everything. So what's great about it, we have two, that we do a senior leadership monthly meeting, and we also do whole of business. So we pick one representative from every BU. So there's two meetings running, and there's a compliance meeting. It's everything from payroll tax or payroll laws that have come, finance, in the world of finance, everything from submissions and lodgements. It's everything you can think of hits that agenda every single month. Okay, so it's to ensure that we are compliant as an organisation, and also we think about our brand and our clients and the importance of them feeling comfortable with what we do every day in processing their payroll.
That's great. Thanks for that, Emmy. If we move on to the next slide, we're going to do a bit of forecasting here with Mark and looking to the future. So, Mark, what's on the horizon 2026 and beyond for compliance?
Well, being a wizard, I can do these magical things, Jack. But so first up is the Albanese federal government has flagged that they're going to make these post-employment restraints. So a non-compete or an anti-poach, all those things that you see in the back of your employment contract. You will not work for anyone after us for 12 months anywhere in Australia. Going to rip those up for a large proportion of the workforce. What's been flagged, and it'll probably be either 26, 27, no doubt tied close to an election, but of saying, right, if you're under the high income threshold in the Fair Work Act, about 175 grand, that you can't restrict the mobility of workers to go and work for a competitor. The idea is it'll free up labour and allow people to take higher salaries with direct competitors and whatnot. We'll see if it has much of an effect, Jack, because they're very rarely enforced through the courts anyway. So it'll probably just be a media release and something that doesn't actually transform the market too much. But that's going to be a big one to change your contracts, change your practices. Secondly, this continued evolution of the return to work mandates. We see employers having tested remote and hybrid work for a number of years. And I think the general consensus is a lot of them are saying, I don't love where the settings are at. So further tinkering of that, maybe trying to get employees back to work more. And, particularly what Emmy said around that know me on the previous slide there, that employers are actually saying, look, we need to get our settings better around making people want to come into the office and feel connected when they're here and actually enjoy that experience of work. So we'll see further movement in that space, subtle but important. And thirdly, this award realignment, should perhaps call that just award tinkering. We see almost every couple of months the Commission with a thought bubble saying, oh, now we're going to transform the awards. Certainly we've got the right to disconnect, the standardised clause. That's working its way through. That will be rolled out in awards soon. An expansion of leave. We always seem to see that. More leave entitlements being given to employees. And no doubt annualised salary arrangements will have to change post Coles and Woolies. So we've got their change fatigue. You all attendees, same as me, just want them to settle for a bit so we can get comfortable with what's in the awards. But that's not going to happen in the next couple of years. So that's the big three things. Try and wrap your head around, be ready for them. And I would say the big takeout from Coles and Woolies as well is you need to be investing and putting a bit more time and effort and attention into this award compliance, spot checks, wages and conditions audits, just to make sure you're on the right side of the ledger. What was it? I think 39% said they're using annualised salaries, and just making sure that they're all very much, or at least ahead of the big, if not every, award-derived entitlement there. Overtime, weekend penalties, span of hours, shift penalties, those sort of things.
Yeah, well, sounds like there's a lot of big stuff on the way, a lot for HR people to keep on top of. Emmy, how exactly do you keep on top of all of this when there's so many changes coming out at a regulatory level, and making sure that you're upholding your compliance?
Wow. Okay. So I think I'll say myself, and I'm going to speak on behalf of the team, we are probably signed up and registered to every forum you can think of. And I think that's probably quite common with a lot of our HR colleagues. But most importantly, we do have the support of, we use a couple of external vendors. So we are connected with companies such as AIG and Gardner, and we do work closely with our external legal counsel as well. So ADP has afforded us the time and investment that I talk about, and give us the time and opportunity to go away and read up and understand, and if not, go out and seek counsel on that. So that's how we do that.
Yeah, sounds like something that'd be very worthwhile, because this stuff can change overnight and can leave you stranded. Here we go. A comment from Rebecca's just come in. We work across 7 modern awards, so I also sign up to all the newsletters and webinars as well. So seems like that's something that's pretty common across the industry and pays to keep you ear to the ground and keeping up with all of it. Do you notice, Mark, with the clients that you work with, that they're all pretty engaged with what's going on in the industry to make sure that they're up to date with compliance?
Well, I only see our clients, so I'd like to think they are. But look, I think the general consensus of businesses is it's very hard to interpret these modern awards now, these so-called modern awards. And as they keep tinkering with them, your compliance profile changes pretty quickly. So it pays to refamiliarise yourself with them. Certainly awards are coming back into primacy, whereas 15 years ago, everyone had a contract or an EBA. You very rarely looked at the award. So I think, investing in those compliance checks, whether that's internal or you get someone external to do it, and just educating yourself and going to things like this, seminars, webinars on your awards. A bit hard for Rebecca with 7 there, but on, the ins and outs of, what are the key provisions of your award and how should you be interpreting, and making sure payrolls are consistent interpretation with HR. Those are the bedrock things that you can do to make sure that you're set up to comply with your awards in 26 and beyond.
Yeah, some valuable insights there. As you were speaking, we've had another question come in from Cassie. She said, in my opinion, there is a very strong but unspoken/unofficial culture that if you want to be promoted and progress through a company, you're expected to work extra hours without compensation and be available at all times. What are your thoughts on this? Would you give any advice to employers around this concept? Do one of you want to take that question?
Can I start? And then I want to throw to you, because I read last night this concept of proximity bias. And not only that, Cassie, but that with hybrid work, those who are choosing to work from the office, who are next to the bosses, is this proximity bias. They're more likely to get the meeting after the meeting. They're more likely to get promoted. They're more likely to go to the client lunch. And with the rise of work from home, all that organisations are tracking is individual performance. So those who are the strongest individual performers are actually getting promoted over those who are great connectors, great team people, great collaborators. So how do you guard against that, Emmy, in-house? There's an easy question. To Cassie's point, how do you stop overwork being rewarded? And to my point, how can you adequately monitor someone when they're only at the office, say, 40% of the time?
Yeah, look, I think you're right. We've done a lot of reading as well. I think there's more data that suggests if you're in the office and have a stronger presence, that those individuals might be promoted over those who are not.
But often males. it should be pointed out too. So it's easier for the blokes to work more predominantly from the office. Add that to the mix.
I think you know what I mean. I'm not sure who this question's coming from, but what I would say is I think it's really important to really think about everything about core business hours, ordinary hours, how your company works, what is appropriate, what is not. People should feel empowered to come forward. If we're talking about someone who's under a modern award, it's not acceptable, right? In that you're not being compensated for that. But I think the question's more around, promotion and being put forward for something. At the end of the day, you can work a moderate amount of hours, which is your 38 hours or plus such reasonable, and find another way to put your best self forward, whether that is attaching yourself to stretch projects, whether that is being part of different committees, whether that is saying, how can I help every so often? It's trying to navigate taking that control back and putting yourself out there in different ways. But definitely, if you ever feel that you are not compensated right, you should also feel very empowered to come forward and have that conversation.
And indeed, I would add to that too, Emmy, that actually, rather than individual stars, you actually want the collaborators. If people are coming to work less, then the need to have those interpersonal skills and be great collaborators and great influencers is a better leadership trait in the next 10 years, interacting with different demographics. Like, what do we have? 4 different generations in the workforce now, is more valuable than just technical star performers who just do their own thing quite well.
Yeah, and I think it also leads on to the question around the type of culture, the compliance culture you're creating within your organisation. So if people feel they need to work an excessive amount of hours to be recognised, then this is where we have our work cut out to try and change that culture. And this is why we launch of the right to disconnect, and this is why the government is putting all these laws into place, right, to give people that balance back.
Yeah, very important, and important to have these conversations. We have another question in here from Christina. They want to know your thoughts on the potential new government legislation about mandating 2 days work from home, and how likely do you think that will be implemented?
Yes, Christina, I was talking with Jackie Felgate about this 3OW the other day. Bit of a plug there. No, I think it's a media release, Christina. It's going to be very hard for so Victoria referred its industrial relations powers to the Commonwealth many, many years ago, back in the Kennett era, saying, well, you guys sort out employment arrangements for Victorian employees. So will the Allen government be able to implement it for government workers? Absolutely. You can codify that in various EBAs in the public sector. Will it then leach out into councils and the private sector? That's going to be very, very challenging. So I am very interested in how it's actually going to be written and imposed and enforced on businesses. Again, for the factories and the farms and the service stations, it's not going to apply to any of them. This is, again, just squarely aimed at knowledge workers. And I find the timing coincidental. It'll be rolled out 6 weeks before a state election, much hoo-ha, might get them back in, and then whether it actually ever gets followed through, who knows. So it's certainly attracting a lot of headlines. I've done a huge survey that, unsurprisingly, a lot of the workers were in favour of. But, it's going to anger the business community, and it's going to be very hard to implement on the ground. So will it change how you run your business? I think that's already been inserted in the Fair Work Act, and that's the one you need to worry about. Not that right, of course, but the flexibility rights that I mentioned.
Thanks for that, Mark. Christina, glad to hear. Glad we could answer your questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but appreciate everyone that asked a question. If you have any more questions, you'll get an email to your inbox post-event with the full Q&A responses from today's chat and the contact details to connect with Mark and ADP. But anyway, thanks, guys, for listening. Emmy, Mark, thank you both for your time and insights.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy.
Thank you.
Dream team.
And everyone else, enjoy your afternoon. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.
Goodbye.